This is for later anyways. Give me, and then once you do your roll, Maria, before you do your roll call, I'm going to mute everybody, and then as we do the roll call,
I think you went to take a shower.
No, I just wanted to make sure everyone was on before you guys got it going, basically. Okay, we're recording. Go for it, Maria. Call it to order. Thank you.
Okay, the meeting is called to order. Today is April 15th, 2020. We are going to be discussing, we'll start with resolution number 1. It is a rental relief resolution, COVID-19 emergency assistance. This is by Councilmember Celeste Friend and Councilmember Moody. Does anyone have any questions about this one? Did you guys want to talk about it?
Celeste, do you want to begin?
Sure. So just to sort of give a really brief narrative to get this started, Delvin and I sort of almost at the same time noticed a press release which the Congressman Brindisi had released, saying that the city was going to be getting a total of $1.48 million specifically in ESG funds. These are emergency solutions grants. They come from HUD and they're specifically designed to address homelessness. And it occurred to us that the best use of these funds would be to help people pay their rent. We know that lots of people across America, and in Utica in particular, or Utica included, are getting behind in their rent. And although we really like the governor's moratorium on evictions, when that moratorium is lifted in, I don't know, another 2 months maybe, we don't really know when exactly it will be lifted. There will be a number of people who will be severely behind in their rent and therefore at risk of becoming homeless. And I think it's really obvious that this is bad for everybody, not just for those who might get evicted, but also for their landlords who need that income, and for the rest of us who then have to deal with a spike in the homeless population here in Utica. So Delvin and I put this together. We understand that it's a non-binding resolution. Delvin and I understand the parameters of our legitimate authority. And so we put this together. Delvin and I are the sponsors. We would be more than happy to accept other sponsors. We would, of course, be more than thrilled to have it go full council. So, and I will be moving this on the floor of the council during the meeting. Thanks. That's all I have. If Delvin has something to add to this.
Celeste, I think that you pretty much said all of it. If you read the legislation, it's not binding. It's simply putting up really a wish list as to just one of the aspects of how we think the ESG funds can be spent, and really asking the administration to look at it in terms of rent relief, giving the authority, or not really authority, but pushing that the UMHA have some sort of input in it, because they have the ability to, and the logistical know-how in terms of dispersing those funds to people who might need them the most. And that's not only, I want to dispel that it's not only low-income families, but it is families and individuals that show that they need help in terms of paying their rent for any reason. So I think the resolution is self-explanatory. I think that we've answered a lot of questions, but if there are questions that anybody has, I'm sure we'll be willing to answer those.
I have a question for Brian Thomas, if you could.
Sure.
So I guess I'm just wondering if this is within our power as council members to do this, and what your position is on this piece of this resolution.
Well, I have a couple comments. First of all, I don't argue with the need for the rent relief. However, I would like to correct one maybe misunderstanding within the legislation. The city is not receiving $1.4 million in emergency solutions grants dollars through the CARES Act. At this point, we received a letter, 2 letters, in fact, one both from HUD to the mayor, which have been provided to the majority leader, and the amounts that we're receiving in community development block grants is first 1.5 million and change. In ESG money, or emergency solutions grant dollars, it's only 743,000, not the 1.4 that was reflected both in this legislation and in a press release by the congressman. There may be additional dollars down the road. The dollars that I mentioned, the 1.5 in CDBG and the 743 in ESG, is based on existing formulas that are used to calculate the city's annual entitlement amount for those 2 pots of funding. Secondly, we're still awaiting the rules and regulations on how those dollars are to be spent. We just received yesterday a memo from HUD stating that a couple parameters under which the city can begin putting its plan together. However, the memo did note that additional rules and regulations will be issued and published in the Federal Register in the coming days. So I, at this point, am a little hesitant to start drawing up a plan until I know the full scope of the rules and regulations under which this funding will be administered. Third, both council people did mention that it is non-binding. This is a plan that the administration will be putting together. It will be an amendment to existing plans and submitted to HUD by the mayor. So there may be income restrictions in terms of who's eligible for this funding. And with all due respect to Councilman Moody, that may be a part of this program. We're just not sure on what the total scope of the rules and regulations are that are going to be put on these dollars by HUD. So I would suggest that this legislation is a bit premature. I think there's a variety of eligible activities that can be funded with these dollars under ESG current rules and regulations. Certainly, we will look at rent relief as being a part of that, and who next to administer that program. But at this point, it's too early to make a call, I would say.
Can I address one piece of that? The resolution very clearly says that the money has to be distributed in, with regulations as established by the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development. So in terms of things like income restrictions, which you mentioned a moment ago, obviously, right? And our resolution takes that into account. So I'm not quite sure about that. I also, we've gone back and forth over how much money. I have spoken to staff at Congressman Brindisi's office, and he has assured us that it is 1.48 million. Half of it has already come through, and the other half, he said, he expects within 30 days, and that was about a week and a half ago, so maybe it's 10 or 20 days. I'm not sure. But there is more money coming through this ESG funding. And also, as I read the ESG website, which I've read very carefully, it very clearly states that these funds can be used for rent relief. So but I also would want to say, I don't want to get bogged down in how much the actual money is. There is already $743,000 on the ground in Utica from ESG funds. I think that we ought to use that for rent relief.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Okay, so there's a couple questions. I think this legislation is excellent at legislation. Okay, I also think, is it possible that we can put this legislation in committee and that all of us work together once that we see what we're getting and where it has to go? Like I've had the last week or so, I've had 3 people call me that are landlords with a lot of apartments, and they're being told, and the tenants are telling them, we're not paying our rent, even though they're getting their money and didn't lose their job. They're telling them, we're not paying our rent because we can't be evicted for 3 months. So I'm a little bit concerned that 2 things I'm concerned about. Number one is this HUD money, is this for income? Where is the income line? Okay. Is it only for poverty level people? Can somebody who lost their job that makes $80,000 a year be eligible for this money? And on that same token, how do we take care of these landlords who aren't getting their money because the tenant's been told they don't have to pay their rent? To me, wait one second. To me, this all makes sense, and I think it's great, but I think that we should hang on to this, wait and see what the actual rules that come from HUD, and then move forward as a council. Every person on this council wants to help people, but I think we are way premature on this, and I want to support it, but there's too many questions here on my end.
If I can respond to that,
Sure.
to all of your questions. Number one, these funds are not going to individuals that already have their rent and already have funds available to pay for them. That is not the intention of the legislation.
Yeah, but how do you know that? And the other question, Delvin, is, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but how do you know that? And number 2, who's gonna handle handing these funds out? Who's going to decide where we're getting the funds from? Who's getting them? Who's getting them?
The 4th line of the resolution said that UMHA would be an excellent branch to do that. They deal with housing. They know how housing works. They know the ramifications of it. A option in terms of getting the money directly, which is twofold, which is something that I put forward, is that we don't even pay give the money directly to the renter. One option is that we give the money directly to the landlord, which does 2 things. It ensures that the money gets to where it needs to go, and it ensures that the renter does not have this issue when the moratorium is up. So that's an easy way we can streamline the process, get the money to the landlord, and it's a win-win situation. So only thing this resolution is calling for is that the money be spent in this way. And again, when we put up this resolution and we sent it to the congressman's office and to him after this, he expressed to us that rent relief is a legitimate way to go about dispersing of ESG funds. Now the administration and others may have a different of opinion on that, but my question would be then is, has anyone reached out to the congressman to work through this? Instead of trying to tear it down, I think this is an opportunity for us to work together and actually do something positive, like everything else that's been going on in the city in terms of this aspect. So Joe, it's not just for people that can pay the rent. That goes against them showing a need. It's for people working, and I hate to say working class, but working class individuals, people who have been laid off, people who've had a job, don't have a job anymore, and legitimately cannot pay the rent.
And Councilman Moody, just if you don't mind, I think that and I'm speaking for myself and some of the other people I've spoke to, some of the major issues that we've had on this is that you hit the nail on the head. We want to work together. We want to work together as a council, and we want to come up with something that's comprehensive that we all feel we should push forward. And at this point, it is only 2 council members that drew this up really quick and then kind of, for lack of better terms, kind of shoved it down our throats. And not kind of going through the proper channels from the beginning. So it kind of leaves a bad taste in our mouth. And when we want to kind of discuss it and figure out what everybody else would like to do with this, I think that's where we all at this point.
May I say another thing? That's not, I understand where you're coming from on that, but my biggest issue on this is we have the people who have apartments know April or March, April, and May, they don't have to pay their rent, so they're not going to be evicted. Why can't we take this and hang on to it until we know exactly what the rules are, and then move forward with it? This is, I think this is very good legislation. I think, but I'm uncomfortable with voting on this, not knowing what the rules are. That's my only point. It's my only thing I can say.
Dizzy does not know the rules.
What's that?
Are you saying the congressman who voted for the bill does not know the rules?
No, I'm saying that Brian Thomas just told us online, or just told us, spoke, that the regulations for this money have not came through yet. That's all I'm saying. I'm just listening. I'm trying to figure this thing out.
Could I pipe in for a minute? DeBrango, Councilman DeBrango here. Obviously, it's a great resolution. I have no problem with it. I'm for rent relief. What I'd like to see is making sure that number is correct, and the $1.48 million. If it's only 743, like Ryan Thomas mentioned, then we might have to change that. If let's get that right first. And what I like to see is Utica administration hopefully allocate a certain percentage of that money to rental relief. I also like to see them, I don't know if you can do it or not, but I like to see them take care of some of the small business owners that are in the area that could use the money and actually hire some of these people back and put them back to work. And that's another thing I would like to see use of this money. So, but I am for the rent relief. I think what we should do is certain percentage go directly to MHA or HUD or whoever it may be, and let them decide who gets the money instead of us trying to decipher what owner, or let the city decipher what owner gets it. I wouldn't even want to go there. I would have them have the whole authority. We'd give them a lump sum and they could disperse it accordingly. That's my opinion, but I am for this relief.
Can I break in there? Are you done, Frank? Can I
I'm
break
done.
in?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to address one part of that, and because I've heard other people say this, that they'd like to spread this money around to, say, small businesses, for instance. I think that that's a worthy laudatory goal. I think we ought to be using some of the CARES money for that. Emergency solutions grants are specifically dedicated to homelessness, to either addressing homelessness itself or to preventing and mitigating against it. Full stop. That's
Agreed.
The only thing that emergency solutions grants can be used for, is preventing, mitigating against, dealing with, responding to homelessness. You
Right,
cannot give this money to small businesses.
I agree to that. And I understand there may be a female living in Cornhill right now that has a business, a hair dressing business. Right now, she has no job. She has no income. So that would be great to just send her some money her way, just to, get some lost revenue and make sure she pays her bills for her business as well as where she's living. So that's what I'm trying to say, trying to help the small business owners, someone in that predicament right there. So.
Well, and then one other thing I'd like to say really quickly, landlords are small business owners, and this helps landlords. The landlords who suddenly have tenants who can't pay their rent because they've been laid off because of COVID-19, those landlords are in a bad spot. And Utica is full of those, what I call mom and pop landlords. They own 2 other houses besides their own. Suddenly they're in a really bad spot in terms of paying their taxes, paying their bills, etc. This helps landlords as well as tenants. It's part of what we really like about this legislation.
Celeste, one question. So when we keep talking about this, people that lost their job and people that can't pay their rent, okay? So right now, anybody who did lose their job is getting their unemployment plus $600. They're making more money than they were making. These tenants, these people are telling their landlords they're not paying the rent because they don't have to, and they don't have to get evicted. That's why I agree with this 100%. I agree with what you're doing. It's a great legislation, but this needs to wait a couple weeks until this gets figured out, and it gets figured out until we can actually know what's going on. And I'll support this. I mean, I'm a person that lost my job now. I know what's going on, and I just I don't see what the rush is on it, because everything is just going with it. I think this could go full council if it was just weighted in the right way and we got a couple more answers. That's all I'm trying to say to you. I really like the idea.
Okay, can I have the floor when you get it?
Yes.
It's Mark Williamson. I concur with Frank DeBring on everything he says. It's right on the money, as well as Joe. My only concern with this being putting out so quick and put out into the system that we're going to give people a false sense of security that their rent's going to get paid, and it might not happen that way, because we're putting the horse before the cart, and that's the only thing I worry about, because some people do think that way because they see it, they hear about it, rumor control, everything else happened. The sea lawyers are saying, listen, we got money coming in. Don't worry, your rent's going to be paid by the city. Some people think that way, and that's another thing, because it was put out there like that, and some people took it that way. Because I got calls from people asking, "Hey, is my rent going to be paid by the city?" And I said, "No, not at this time." I said, "Could it happen? Sure, but we don't know yet." And so that's another concern I have. I wholeheartedly agree with the other council people have been saying. Great legislation. However, I think it was done prematurely, and I think it might have gave some people a false sense of security, thinking that the rent's going to get paid by the city of Utica and its funds. And that's one of my concerns now, because, like Joe says, people are getting unemployment, they're getting assistance. You got people who can't pay their mortgage. So what happens at the end of the day, they're thinking that somebody's going to get, their mortgage or their rent's going to get paid. And we don't know that yet, because we don't know all the parameters of everything, and we put legislation, we're going in there blindly, I think. So that's my concern. Other than that, I do agree with the legislation as a whole. I think it was done in a great way. However, I have to agree with the rest of the councilmen and council ladies, that I think we don't know all the particulars. That's all I have.
Can I ask a question? I think that on the floor it's been a lot of saying that we don't know all the particulars, we don't have all the answers. So would the council entertain? I mean, the resolution, it seems like everybody agrees with the resolution, accepting the part that says the city of Utica will disperse these federal funds as rent relief subsidies. So would you all be willing to, if it needed to be, that it said the city of Utica Common Council calls on the city or calls on the administration, if possible, to disperse these federal aid monies as directed rent relief.
Well, I think we need to put all our heads together, Councilman Moody. I think we all, as a committee as a whole, come up and brainstorm it, all the different areas that, need to be looked at as a whole, not just a piece. We need to put the whole in there, from landlords to small business owners to everybody. And then we send it up formally as a resolution up to the mayor. So he has what we're thinking and what we're getting from the constituents as well at the same time. And then he could take that working document and go with his staff, this is an administrative function, and get with his staff to decide, what the parameters, how we can do this. But right now, I think we're all shooting off the hip, because we're all talking about different problems what everybody's going through, but it's only documented to one area. And like I said earlier, when it hit the press and it hit the media, people assume that their rent's going to get paid by all this funds, and it might not happen that way. Even though they're getting unemployment and they're getting this and they're getting that, they still might think that their rent's going to get paid by the city. And they might take that funds that they're receiving otherwise from other, from unemployment or whatever, and then spend it on something else instead of saving it, because they knew they got to pay the rent. And so, or their mortgage or anything else.
Can I take a turn?
Yes.
I think it's really, you're allowing the perfect to be the enemy of the good here, right? So this some people might get their hopes up and have their hope dashed. Some people who might not deserve it might get it. Some people who might deserve it might not get it. No governmental policy is ever going to be perfect. There are always going to be problems with it. And you're letting that ideal perfect be the enemy of something that's actually quite good. And the reason to do this quickly is because people are suffering right now. 1/3 of Americans who rent couldn't pay their rent in April. And that's got to be higher in Utica, because we are poorer than, on average, the average American, locality. People are suffering and hurting right now. People are anxious about getting evicted as soon as the eviction moratorium is lifted. And then I just want to say one other thing, and I'll keep this really brief. The idea that we sort of worked alone and shoved this down people's throats. Yep. I thought that was how it worked. Nobody consulted me about. No one consulted me about the PPE legislation. No one consulted me in advance about the bail reform legislation. No one consulted me about starving feral cats to death.
Can I say something on that?
That's how that works. This is how it works. We each go out in our own corners. We come up with our best idea and we bring it to the group.
Can I say something on the PPE legislation?
Absolutely.
What I did on the PPE legislation is that I worked with the local union on that, and they asked me to sponsor that resolution. So the first thing I did is I took the resolution, I made the changes on it, and then I submitted it to the mayor's office. I submitted it to our corporation council. I like your face. You don't have to make faces. I submitted it to every council member on this committee, and they had a whole week to look at it. I didn't send it out to the newspapers. I didn't do a media thing on it, try to make myself look great. I presented it to the council before anything. And that's how you should do it. I know a lot of young council people, when they get on the committee, they get a good idea and they think it's like they found a nice colored stone and they're going to do something with it and do something great with it. Well, the way you run legislation is you're running through the people on the council first to make sure so you understand what so they could all put their thoughts in it. You're running through the executive because they are the executive portion of the city. You want everybody to work on the same sheet of music. So if you want to be a lone wolf, you want to do things your way, that's fine. But if you want to work on real legislation and make it work through correctly, maybe you ought to follow our lead. That's all I have to say on that.
So I'd like to say one thing before we go any farther. So Celeste, bringing up what you said about feral cat legislation, that was a Thursday rule matter. And if you're not mistaken, as soon as I got the legislation, I forwarded it to the whole council asking if anybody would be interested in sponsoring that. The other thing that I would like to say, one other thing I'd like to say before you finish, okay? what I don't, I mean, this came out, there's 5, I think out of the 9 of us here, I think 5 or 6 of us have talked already. And we all like the legislation, but all we're asking is to put it in a meeting, and this legislation is gonna pass. If it's gonna pass if we can put our little inputs into it. And isn't that the goal, to get the people the money and pass it, just tweak a couple things? I mean, nobody's fighting you or Delvin on it. I think 5 out of the 9 of us, I mean, a few of us haven't talked, but I think everybody agrees that we want to do this. But we just want to look at it and put a couple things in it. Is 2 weeks going to really make a difference in this? Or are you going to take a chance bringing it to the floor just to bring it to the floor to see it get turned down? I mean, you have legislation that's going to pass if we just look at it a little bit. That's all anybody's asking you. That's all I got. I'm sorry.
Okay, we're going to take the segue into the next resolution, number 2,
I-
memorializing.
I think I was brought up by Councilmember Medical, if I can respond.
Sure.
Just briefly, 10 days, everyone had the legislation. In 10 days, everyone complained about the fact that a press release was sent out, supposed to be simultaneously with the resolution being sent to the council. I wanted to acknowledge the fact that Councilwoman Friend did apologize to all of us about how she intended to send the resolution along with the press release. And so if we're talking about working as a team, we sent it out, sure. But no one came back to us, and we responded to every question, every single question that was brought to us by a member of the council. We responded to every single one. And then to the other argument, if we want to look at the ontological argument that you all are making in terms of that we can't talk about something publicly until there's a resolution before us, we should have never talked about residency, because that was talked about publicly before any of us seen legislation on it. We should have never talked about things with paving, never talked about things in any of our campaigns, because that was predating any legislation that any of us seen. And so I just want to push back on the notion that that as duly elected members of this council, we don't have the authority to bring forth legislation or ideas. All we did was bring a resolution to the committee of a whole, and that might have been dated within 24 hours or 48 hours, but the press release went out and was supposed to go out simultaneously with the resolution. And Celeste Friend did apologize to you all that that time had got the best of her regarding that. That's all.
Madam Chairman, can I say something?
Sure,
Madam Chairman?
absolutely.
I didn't draw this resolution. That's the council attorney. I didn't draw this resolution. I didn't say anything about it. I wasn't asked about it, either by the parties who sponsored it. I have no objection to it. But Councilman Moody brought out really the most relevant part, that if you're going to do anything with this matter, you should take his suggestion of an amendment, because you already acknowledge you do not have the power to do this individually. This is HUD money. It's going to go done through the executive branch. So Councilman Moody was suggesting, and I think he was correct, that the resolution should say that the Common Council of the City of Utica recommends that the federal aid money that the city is going to receive, some of it should be directed toward the rent relief subsidies. And then that tells the people who are going to have to acknowledge the HUD regulations, which is Mr. Thomas and the administration, that the city of Utica is interested, by virtue of its Common Council, that rent subsidies be one of the areas that we disperse monies. And would you give us some direction of how much we can do that, how much money, and how would you suggest we do it to make sure it all gets through into the right hands? Now, as far as mentioning MHA, which is a separate organization, with a separate board and everything else, which you don't control, mentioning them doesn't hurt, and nor does it suggest that the one thing that Mr. Beatrice or somebody said is you shouldn't tell people that the city of Utica will, if you're a common council, unless you have the power to do that, which we were suggesting, which you do not. But Councilman Moody was correct that the legislature said that the common council of the city of Utica will set forth what is desired in this matter and what should happen with the money. And I think that's perfectly okay. And I think when you can even pass that if you want, because then Brian Thomas knows that the Common Council of the City of Utica is interested in this rent subsidy question, and that he probably he should be talking to them when they start talking to him about the rules and how he can put your wishes into action, because they're going to have to figure out a way to do it. Just like Councilor Beatrice, who gets it, why you get it, and who are you, and what is your status? How do you identify yourself that you're a person eligible? You know, all of that is very complex. But to just, again, I say I have no objection. That's the reason I didn't respond to the legislation. I have no objection to it. And I thought that if somebody asked me, I'd say just change that one, you know, be resolved that Common Council would be in favor of the administration putting together part of its package rent subsidies. And I think that's about all you can do, because you all acknowledge that you're not going to do this. Ultimately, it's going to be done through an executive branch of the government, and it's also going to be done as HUD says you can do it, as they're going to control the money, and they're going to have to count to HUD how they're spending all the money. And now Brian Thomas is in this meeting, and he knows what your feelings are. I'm sure that he does understand that the Common Council cannot directly order him to do anything, but the should in his best interest to do that which they suggest. So that's the only thing I'd offer. And if I think you should, if you're going to discuss it and maybe pass it, it should be that the Common Council, you know, is saying what their feeling is on this matter, rather than say this because the city of Utica will. We don't know that the city of Utica will, because we don't know what the guidelines are. I don't know what they are.
So
I'm sure Brian Thomas will find out pretty soon.
I'd like to just make one comment on
That's all I have to offer on this matter.
I'd like to make one comment. I agree. Will should be taken out, obviously. I think recommend would be, you know, however we word it. Also, I just want to make sure that the dollar amount is right. Is that right, Brian Thomas, the dollar amount? Before we agree on this? Are you listening?
From HUD directly to the mayor, and the one that addresses ESG states a figure of $743,966. If you go on HUD's website, HUD has a website for the CARES Act for every community throughout the country that's receiving dollars, whether it be CDBG, ESG, home, or HOPWA, which is housing opportunities for persons with AIDS. And it on that HUD's website clearly shows under the home column for the city of Utica, $743,000. There may be additional funds based on a new formula that HUD is still in the process of developing. That takes into that new equation, cap formula, will take into account the impact that each community has suffered as a result of COVID-19.
Okay, so can I ask one question? As far as the amount, regardless of the amount, what we're asking for, the only difference is you'd be allotting 700 and some odd thousand versus 1.5 million. So it would be the same. I mean, it's not like we're asking to give, you know, a portion of that to go for rent relief. So the amount really, to me, doesn't really matter at this point.
Exactly.
And then Delvin, let me ask you this question. Are you willing to change that, what he's saying? To put that
I think the amount does matter, because if you say you're going to give 10% of 1.4 or 1.5 versus 10% of 743,000, that makes a big difference.
Yeah, but Frank, Councilman, we're not saying any amount. We're asking them that some of the money.
Well, they're not receiving $1.48 million for the solutions grant, or ESG. They're only receiving 743,000. So that's, I
Okay,
just want to
all right.
make that figure right.
Yeah.
That's all I'm asking.
If
Yeah.
I hear what everybody's saying correctly, is that you just want to make an amendment to say that we are requesting that this be done, and we're also saying, instead of a specific amount, we're asking for some of the funds to be allocated for rent relief.
Exactly.
Can
Okay
somebody
with that,
offer
yes.
That's okay.
for this?
That's okay. That's okay. I think that's a good suggestion.
I'll say you strike out any amount and just say
I
that.
said that's okay, and I think it's a good suggestion.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good
Should talk
idea. Let's
about
just strike out the amount.
Should talk about,
Yes.
I don't
Okay.
think you should talk about the monies specifically. I think you just say the grant, what the act is, and then, of course, that you're suggesting that
Yes.
that
I
part of it
agree.
go to that. And I think that all of you can agree on that. I don't see any objection to that at all.
Right. I agree with you 100%.
To do
Those amendments on the floor?
that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think that both
Did-
Delvin and I would
excuse-
leave it as friendly amendments.
okay, awesome.
Maria, can I ask one question quick?
Mhm.
Did anybody check with MHA on that?
Yes. They have,
And who did you,
I spoke to John Furman, and just to tell me that they have experience of distributing ESG funds. They know how to do it. They
Yeah, I
understand,
don't,
et cetera. That's
I
what
guess I don't have, I wasn't involved in that decision at all, but that's,
You broke up.
Who was that?
Okay. This is Celeste, and I'm answering Frank Miola's question. I spoke briefly last week with John Furman at the MHA, just to confirm that the MHA does in fact know understands HUD regulations. They have experience using ESG funds. They are well equipped. They would be ready to go.
but
They know how to do this. And that's the only
right,
reason
so you-
that I specifically mentioned the UMHA.
well, that's great, but the CEO is Kelly and the
Right.
board, so maybe you should have got some kind of written letter from them to support that that they're the best suited for this.
Well,
They
and
may have
also,
somebody else.
can I just say that the resolution actually is open-ended about which agency? It says local agencies, including the UMHA. It leaves it open. I meant to leave it open as to which agency would be best equipped to this, and I mentioned them as one example.
Okay.
But point
Okay.
taken, I understand. That would have been a good thing to do. Yeah, I'll do that next time. That is a good suggestion.
Any more discussion? We want to move on from that one?
Yes.
Okay. The next one is resolution number 2. It's memorializing resolution. This is from council member Lemetico, Beatrice, and Burmaster. Does anybody have any questions regarding this one, or good with that one?
Is that full council?
It could be.
Being full council?
I would be happy to go on board with that.
I'm good.
Full council? Okay.
The next one is amending residence requirement for the UPD. It's local law number 3 of 2020. This is a local law that would make it so that all members of the police department, after working for the police department after 5 years, would be able to move out of the city with notice to the police chief. And if they would like to move back into the city, they would also have to notify the police chief. Any discussion on this one?
We're just laying it on the table tonight. That's all we're doing, correct?
I believe that is in the intent, correct?
Okay.
I had one question on it.
Shoot.
Let's say he was a police officer in the city of Utica, and he was a police officer for 2 years, and then he moved out to another job, and he wants to come back in. Does that count as 2 years? Has he already lived there, or has he got to start the 5 years over again?
The way I interpret the legislation, he'd have to do 5 years in Utica.
So so that means he'd have to do an additional 5 years.
No, if he did 2, it sounds like he'd have to do 3 more.
Well, I think he'd have to do 5. So I think that's something we got to
2
discuss.
plus 3
on
is
that.
5.
We add consecutive or non-consecutive?
Yeah.
I think that's something I think we should discuss.
I agree.
Hey,
That's just a procedural note. Once you guys lay this on the table, it does have to be laid on the table in its final form. So if you're going to make that change, I would suggest making it prior to laying it on the table.
Charlie Brown, can you speak upon that? Charlie?
Yeah, you want to amend it in some way? Then
We're just
we should
wondering
do that before it goes on the table.
if this piece of
Question,
legislation,
Charlie, is very simple. Charlie, they want to know if a guy was a police officer and he served maybe 2 or 3 years, then he went someplace, then he came back after this law is passed. How many years does he have to live in Utica when he comes back? Does he get the credit for the previous years or not? Or does he start over as a new employee and he has to do 5? That's the question.
You're talking about, in your hypothetical, this is a person who has left city employment?
Yeah, hypothetically. A guy was a police officer, he served there for 2 years, then he, after this law became law, he comes back and he qualifies and becomes a police officer. How many years does he have to live in Utica before he can move on?
The normal rule for things like this is continuous service.
So
Of continuous service. So if he
he's a new
left,
employee.
if he left under circumstances in which he was on like a leave of absence, such that upon his return, it would be deemed continuous service for purposes of seniority, rules, and all that sort of stuff, then he just needs 3 more years. If he left, completely severed his employment with the city, and then came back, he's coming back as a new employee.
Right.
I
So
agree
you're-
with that completely.
But Charlie, even if he maintained a police status,
If you want to say after 5 years of continuous residency, then you can say so, if that's what you want.
Maria, can I ask Charlie a question?
yes.
Charlie, do you believe that this local law does not require a referendum?
Absolutely
explain
does not
why?
require a referendum. Absolutely does not allow a
Would you
referendum.
mind explaining?
Okay, we've been through this before. The city has
But
limited powers. The city has limited powers. You can only do things, you exist because you have a charter from the state of New York. You only exist and you only have the powers that the state has given you. State of New York law is very, very clear. You're not allowed to have a referendum unless there's a statute that specifically authorizes or requires it. And there's no such statute that applies here.
Charlie, was this local law contested in federal court?
I don't think so, no.
Yes, it was, Charlie. The police department a few years ago brought it to federal court, sir.
No, they
Are you
brought
aware
it
of
in
this?
practice charge in PERB.
Nope, they brought it to court on it, and there was a decision. It wasn't in PERB. Are you aware of this?
I don't remember that.
Well,
I remember
was.
PERB proceeding in which it was declared that you couldn't apply it retroactively.
The PERB proceeding was brought to court. Are we aware of this?
Not that I recall.
Okay, so the recommendation, I guess the gray area that wouldn't hurt would be to refer this for a referendum, and basically it wouldn't hurt on all ends, would it, Charlie? Would it make a big difference if it just was brought to the people to vote in November 2020?
It would violate state law. I suppose that makes a difference.
Well, how did it violate state law in 2008 after it was contested? It was affirmed as it sits. Nothing was changed. So it was challenged in judicial court and passed. So how can you state that?
I'm not sure I'm following. It goes to
I know.
there are several statutes out there. There are several statutes out there that say the kinds of things that have to go to referendum. So depending on what the local law does, if it fits in one of those boxes, it goes to referendum. If it doesn't fit in one of those boxes, it does not go to referendum. When the 2008 local law took away the power of the mayor to grant waivers. That abolishes or curtails the power of elected officials. That's one of the boxes that goes to referendum.
Correct.
The law doesn't do that.
Absolutely. Yes, it does. It does curtail
How does
the
it
power
curtail?
of the mayor. The power of the mayor right now, because of the power of the mayor right now, sir, offers 100% residency as an employee. This law is curtailing it down to 5 years, sir.
That's not the power of the mayor. That's the statute is on its own terms.
Well, you just stated me the power of the mayor concerning this, which I went for, you are absolutely correct. During the legislation, the power of the legislation stated very clearly, and the legislation stated very clearly, the residency was for the term of the employment. And it wasn't just for police officers, it was for all city employees. With that said, if the mayor has the authority to keep these city employees residents for their whole term of being employed, reduced it to 5 years, that's curtailing his power, sir.
The mayor doesn't have the authority to require the person to be a resident for his employment. The law says that.
Yes,
Whether the mayor wants it or not,
that's
the
where the
law
mayor
says
gets his
that.
authority from the law.
He doesn't. It's not his authority. It's a term and condition of employment.
Well, Charlie, I like I said before, I don't believe it would hurt one bit to put it on the November election. I do believe that you do have some gray area grounds where I do believe it passed before in 2008, and it was, like I said, affirmed in court. So there should be no problem in doing an amendment.
Even assuming that it was affirmed in court, you can still change it. You always have the authority to change it.
You're absolutely right, Charlie. We do have the authority to change it, but I don't believe, I really don't believe that the authority should be allowed by the Common Council when the City of Utica residents gave that authority to the mayor.
The City of Utica residents didn't give the authority to the mayor. They made it a law.
Who enforces it?
On everybody to whom the law applies.
Is it, Charlie? Good move. Excellent move.
It's exactly, it's the law. What can I say? I don't make it up.
All right. I'll agree to disagree with you, but like I said, I don't think it would hurt one bit to put it on a referendum question in November.
The only thing it would hurt is the fact that you'd be acting unauthorized and violating the state law.
Well, we violated the state law on November 28th, and once again, it was affirmed in court. If you would like to check, please do so.
That wasn't a referendum issue.
Oh, yes, it was. The police department didn't want to, remain in the city, of course.
Whatever litigation there was in 2008 did not deal with a referendum issue.
If you check it out, yes, it did.
Send me a copy of the decision. I'd like to see that.
I shall.
Okay.
Thank you. Would any other council members like to speak on this, or Chief Williams?
We need to change the wording then. Is it going to be continuous 5 or is it going to be a total of 5?
I think to clarify it, Jack, you should write continuous in there.
Well, it's up to the members of this council how they want to do it.
I believe if somebody worked as a police officer for 2 years and went to work as a state trooper, and 2 years later he didn't like it and came back and got hired again as a police officer, he starts as a new employee and should be 5 years. Other than that, if he's out because of disability or some other thing and he still has ties with the city, it should be, that's a different thing. But it's kind of like the Councilor Brown said, you'd be started as a new employee. So I agree with what he said.
All right, so we need to change that then. Would somebody like to? Maria, would you like to make that change?
I disagree.
Okay.
I think if someone worked here for 2 years, he devoted his life out there in the streets, he went to another position, maybe with a higher pay, but now that the UPD is getting a good dollar rate, and he wants to come back, or she, whoever it may be, I think they should come back. And if it's 2 years and they have 3 years left, then they should be eligible after the 3 years. They did devote some time and energy and
You're
saved some
correct.
lives and worked hard for our city. I think they should be eligible to come back. And if we do that, and let's say, I don't know if this person may be thinking about coming back, I don't know. If there is a person out there, obviously they want to come back. So I would say welcome them with open arms if
So
that's the case.
when,
Right.
just procedural note, if this is introduced on the floor and that amendment is moved, it will be subject to a majority vote. So you'll all be able to vote on that amendment prior to it.
Okay.
Okay?
Can I ask one other question to the
Sure.
police, to the chief?
Yes.
So in other situations, how does that work now? How does your seniority process work in other situations like right now? If this type scenario that we're talking about happened, so like when you go for bidding on a job, okay, so if the person worked 2 years, he left and he got hired back, would he still have his 2-year seniority? Because I would think you have to follow past practice, correct?
It's all based on civil service rules. If they leave more than 1 year, they lose all their seniority, and they start as a new employee. Here's the thing: whether it's a combination of years or it's 5 consecutive years,
Right.
I got to give them a reason to come back. And voting for this residency will give me a good reason for them to come back.
Okay, I get it then. I'll agree with Councilman DeBrango on that and on that point then.
I'd like to just weigh in too. Something that was talked about at a lot of the community meetings that you went to was that the people wanted the 5 years there because they thought that the police officers would get to know the streets. And I feel if they were there for those 2 years or they were there for those 3 years prior, they would get to know the streets for that amount of time, and that would never really be taken away.
I agree with you.
So I agree with that.
Can I say something, Madam Chair?
Sure.
It's Mark Williamson, not Mark Williams, Mark Williams' son.
You only wish.
Okay. Anyways, the reason why actually we're doing this and we're even entertaining this is because it has come to our attention as a common council, and the chief will probably weigh in on this, that it's becoming a safety problem within the city because we cannot find police officers who serve in our city. And we're trying to, bring up our staffing again in the police department. And I think Chief can mention that because I know the press is here. And I also know that they know, we're changing. We're not taking away the referendum. We're just amending it. So to give more tools to the chief of police to bring in more police officers and entice people to come become police officers, because police officing is not the same it was 25 years ago, 30 years ago, or 10 years ago. It's changed. And I think that's why we're entertaining this thing in the first place. We're not changing what the people's will is. We're just changing, we're amending. They're still living in the city, but at the same time, we're looking at public safety coming from the people from the front lines, which is Chief Williams and his staff, and we're listening to them. We have a deficit of police officers. We're 15 down, the last I heard, and we need to do something about it and give the chief the tools to bring more police officers back into the city and hire police officers, because every year we're losing more and more people and we're not replacing them. So we need to, that's why we're doing this. So Chief, you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I'd like to just add something before the chief speaks.
Okay.
When we hire a police officer and you put them through the academy and you invest a lot of time and money and effort, and all of a sudden they leave within a year, there's $23,000 to $30,000 down the drain. So by opening up this, maybe we could open up to outside agencies, let's say Whitestown, New Hartford, whatever, maybe a police officer that really wanted to be a Utica police officer, and then we can get them transferred in. The money that we save on the schooling alone would be $23,000 to $30,000 just on the schooling, because some of these officers, like we said earlier, they stayed for 2 years, they took off. Now they may want to come back, so that's not a bad thing. It's a cost savings as well for the city. That's all I just wanted to add.
Good.
Thank you.
Good point, Frank. Good point.
Madam Chairman,
Yes?
as was correctly pointed out, you can't lay on the table something that is not in its final form. Now, what Councilman DeBrango says, that makes sense. But whatever you do, whatever you decide this evening, if you want to lay it on the table, you should amend it right now and put that amendment in and then lay it on the table, because then you will have a complete document. If you lay it on the table and then you bring it up 2 weeks from now, if you amend it, you have to lay it on the table again. So you're talking about another 2 weeks after that too, because you have to have it in its final form. Now, if you could put together a phrasing that someone who is a former police officer of the city of Utica and returns to the position will be given credit for the time previously served on the 5-year limitation, then you have made your legislative intent clear in written form. We're not like the legislature. When the New York State legislature does, they have all legislative intent, and everything they say in meetings like this is brought up in court later on as far as what they were doing. But for us, we don't have that kind of system. Now we have to have our legislation say what we mean. So if you have more than 5 votes that say that they would entertain and give to any prior officer pursuant to with civil service restrictions, credit for time previously served, then you have to say so. And then you have a complete law, in my opinion. Charlie,
Judge Garamone, excellent points. To the council, can I offer that you could potentially amend that to read after the minimum 5 years employed total residency? That way, the residency is tied to both the employment and the total rather than the consecutive, if you wanted to do it that way.
Works for me.
Well,
Hold on.
we have the corporation counsel there who has
Or
to.
Charlie, how would you do that? Right?
And I would like to have Charlie's input on that, because it seems to me that you might be entertaining an amendment, and I think it should read in a way that the city of Utica can defend it. And nobody's going to defend it better than Charles Brown. Well, he can.
So you want to allow an employee who served, trying to figure out what it is you want to do.
You aggregate an aggregate of 5 years.
Combined?
You're right. A total aggregate of
So
5 years.
a guy who serves 2 years, goes away, comes back 10 years later and serves 3 years, that's okay?
No, absolutely not. And that's why I think we have to be careful about wording, because when we go down the rabbit hole of the idea of the scenario of 2 years, you've gone for 2 years, but you come back, it's not everybody's scenario. And I think we have to be careful about wording. I think it should be something that maybe says that they have to have served a minimum 5 years continuously or something like that. But if you just like you said, that if you've been here for 2 years, you left for 10, this city has changed, and you do not. It's not just about living here for 5 years, as if it's a jail sentence.
So how would you like to hear it, Delvin? What's your point?
I think the real argument, Jack, that you brought up is a different layer that we haven't thought about. Is how do we look at the 5 years? And I think that's the layer that you brought up that I haven't even thought about yet. That adds a totally different dynamic to it. That, I mean, may not change the outcome for one scenario, but the other scenario of what if you left and came back, is that going to be credit toward the 5 years? Is a total factor that I haven't really thought about.
Yeah, I think it's something that
there is a limit on
right.
As so put on,
Right.
there is a limit on how many years you can be out and
Exactly.
then come back in as a transfer. Now, what Councilman DeBrango is saying, there are people out there that left Utica, and if they want to come back and they're employed in that capacity, they can get a transfer. And if they got a transfer and they've been a Utica officer, then obviously you don't have to train him or anything. You transfer and he gets credit. But you could put in there, but in that scenario, that you have to be, you cannot be out any more than a certain number of years and get that benefit.
Why don't you,
Or else,
why don't we just put in there, why don't we just
I like,
put in there a 5-year window?
Joe, can we get the chief's opinion on this?
There you go.
Sure.
Thank you. My opinion is, listen, I'm good with 5 consecutive years. I need relief now, and the reason why is I just lost my 15th officer to a lateral transfer to a sheriff's department out by Rochester, and the reason given was residency. I'm going into this COVID virus situation now with down 15 officers. God forbid we have someone affected and people quarantined, I'm going to be down even more officers.
Right.
And even from the standpoint of hiring, and when you look at local hiring, all the agencies are hiring in large numbers. We are at a disadvantage because we're the only ones with a residency law that's strict. All I'm asking for is an amendment to this residency to give us some relief so that I could be someone on an even playing field with some of these agencies when it comes to hiring and retaining employees. Because right now it's not working.
So what you're saying is you are okay with 5 consecutive years residency?
I'm fine because what happens is after they're gone for 1 year, based on civil service law, they lose all their seniority anyway. If they come back, they start from scratch anyway. So it doesn't make a difference if it's a combination of years or 5 years. I'm good with 5 consecutive years.
And I'll put my backing behind the chief on that one.
Yeah,
This
I
is
agree.
great. Can we go with that and just move on?
I'm with you.
I agree.
Okay.
So we will put 5 consecutive years of residency. So
Can I say? I would use the word continuous.
Yeah.
Because that has meaning under the civil service law.
okay.
So I would say after a minimum of 5 years of continuous residency, individuals employed.
So, all right, so put continuous there. We're all good with amending that?
Yep.
Well, it's up to Maria to push that out.
Okay, so it's going the other way. You're going with continuous on the floor.
Right.
Okay, I'm just taking notes here.
It's going on or as amended. Yes. Okay. So the next piece of legislation, resolution number 4, it is for housing and the homeless. Councilman Beatrice would like to speak on behalf of this before we discuss it.
Yeah, I want to withdraw this legislation. I need to do much more research on this. I acted a little bit quick going there, and I'm not comfortable with it, so I want to withdraw this legislation.
Okay.
Okay. The next piece of the next ordinance is ordinance number 5. This is feral cat ordinance. This is also by Councilman Beatrice, and he would like to speak on behalf of this one as well.
Yes, I'm going to ask for all your help on this. I'd like to put this in committee, and I'd like Delvin to set up a committee meeting where we could all talk through this. I'll just say one thing very quick. This legislation is not to hinder people from taking care of pets or animals. I have 3 or 4 severe areas in North Utica where there's 20 or 30 feral cats and they're damaging neighbors' properties. And I received many calls today, and some were very happy that I proposed this, and other people were calling me, telling me their thoughts. And when I explained to them my intentions, every one of those persons agreed that when there's an abundance of cats, that the animal lovers will even tell you that they are not doing any justice feeding these cats and not taking care of them. And I know everybody wants to talk about the spade and take care of them. In a couple of my incident in places, the homeowner actually takes the cats and has them spayed and neutered and keeps bringing more and more in. So we need to come up with a solution. I'd like to get the Humane Society, maybe the Animal Control, There's a gentleman that works in our city, Mike Peak, who's willing to help me. Madam, I'm sorry, Maria gave me a lady's name to contact today, which I did. So I'd like to set this up where we could work together as a council and come up with something to help everyone. Thank you.
Celeste, you're muted. I think you're trying to talk. I see your mouth.
Good job, Maria. Joe, thanks very much. I spoke to a couple people today, and I also have a couple of names of local, informal volunteer groups and rescue groups who would also be happy to be involved. So I could exchange that information with you later.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Councilman Beatrice, I'll reach out to you and then reach out to other council persons so we can set up a time to do that committee meeting. But absolutely willing to work with you on this.
Thank you.
Beatrice, you're a true Republican.
All right. So
This
everything
is just staying in committee, Councilwoman?
is, yes, that's going to stay.
Okay.
Okay.
I do have a point of order though, because I was confused about this. So it was submitted to the committee of a whole, but does it go into the codes committee just for information, or is that just the process by which we divvy up who calls the next meeting?
I believe the sponsor can decide, or whoever can decide what committee they'd like it to go into.
Well, I think it should go under codes.
If you'd like to introduce this on the floor, make a motion to place it in the codes committee, that's
Yes.
fine.
Yeah, that's what I would like to do.
Okay.
I'll second it.
So next is a piece of legislation that we currently have in the committee of whole. Anybody want to talk about anything that's in there or have any questions or concerns regarding it, or do we just want to move to the floor?
Which piece?
There is 5 of them in there. The first one is resolution approving the pilot agreements. The second one is establishing tax forks on salary and compensation. The second ordinance is a Whitesboro Street lot for Nexus Center. The third ordinance is a purchase of Whitesboro Street for the Barrel Company. And the fourth one is the purchase of 928 Lansing Street. Would anybody like to discuss or talk about any of those before we move to the council meeting?
Yeah, I'd like to, so now these, let me understand these. These, we're going to be voting on these on the floor tonight?
Hold for 1 second.
Okay.
So ordinance 2, 3, and 4 are on the agenda this evening as public hearing. We did advertise for them. We did not receive any communication, but when we typically on the floor in our agenda would have public hearing for the properties, we passed the public hearing for those 3 ordinances 2, 3, and 4. So now those will be, the public hearing will happen. And as typically, I'll have to ask for the motion to pull each ordinance from committee. And then those will be brought to a vote if you don't place them back into committee. Yes, the same procedure. Resolution 0 and resolution 1 sit in the committee of whole, and that's up to the council to move those to the agenda if they'd like to. So,
Mr. President, I got one, as far as when you're saying, I was contacted a little bit before the meeting tonight from Carl Anise, and I just gave him the link for the YouTube meeting. I didn't know that, I don't believe he wanted to speak or anything, but I just want you to know that. So I didn't know.
that's fine.
Okay.
So Maria, this is, this, I'm just going to hand you back the reins here, but this is our typical quote agenda review here. So however you want to close it out.
Okay. I'd like to, is this the time when we would say if we're for something or against something? Because I'd like to speak on the Nexus property.
Well, this is still, so I'm handing it back to Maria. This is still our pre-meeting conference, committee of the whole meeting, and we're going over the pieces that are on the agenda for this. So Maria, you want to move through them in whatever order you want to move through them.
Well, I mean, if anybody just has any questions regarding them, if you want to go through one at a time, we can. I think we're kind of short on time.
Okay.
Hey, Maria, Mark
Yes.
Williamson. Resolution 0, the pilot programs. I think I'd like to put that back because the attorney Hartnett said that she's still collecting more data for us. and I'd like to put that back in committee.
So it'll
Okay.
stay in committee.
It's in committee, so we just
Yeah.
will not be pulling it out of committee until we receive the information that we.
Exactly. That's what
Okay.
that's what I meant.
All right, so resolution 0 will stay, okay?
And Councilman Moody, how do you feel about the task force one?
Can I rescind it? It was only I keep forgetting that that's in the committee. It was only in reference to the salaries increase, us increasing the salaries. So I can rescind it. I mean, it's already passed now, so it makes no sense to keep bringing it up.
Okay, so resolution 1 has been withdrawn from committee by Moody. So that can go away. Clerks, please note that.
I got it.
Would anybody like to talk about either piece of Whitesboro Street property that will be being discussed tonight, whether it's for the parking or the Nexus Center or the.
Will we have our, on the Nexus property, will we have our chance to talk about that on the floor before the
Yeah.
vote? Okay, I'll hold off then.
And just one thing on the Nexus Center, Celeste did forward me as well as, well, it was forwarded to the whole council, the I think it's the storm and mitigation plan for that parking lot. So I think that's just one thing to note for those that may be looking about that aspect of flooding, that it is a comprehensive plan in terms of making sure that we don't have to close it down.
Thank you.
Could I have the floor?
Absolutely. Councilman.
I like, I like, I don't know what the echo is, but I like to talk about the parking lot. I think it's a no-win situation. Somebody's gonna pave it for it. They're gonna have the liability on it. We're gonna own it, and I think the city's gonna benefit from it. So going forward, I don't see there's a problem with this.
Anybody else, or would like to move to the regularly scheduled meeting?
Let's move to regular meeting.
Let's go.
All right,
Thank you.
Pre-caucus, caucus meetings. Is there a second?
Second it,
Well, medical.
Williamson.
All right. Leaning-
Okay, just procedural note, I just stopped the recording for the caucus. Please keep the live feed going, camera crew, thank you very much. I'm going to begin the recording for the main meeting in just a moment, and we will call the meeting to order.
Can I run out for like 30 seconds?
Yes.
Can we take 5 minutes? Can we take 5 minutes?
Hey,
If
President
well, so-
Galimi,
Hold on just 1 second. Hold on 1 second. I will call this meeting to order at 7:25.
Thank you.
Sounds good to me.
hey, President Galimi, is it just my computer or is everybody's, my picture and everybody else is blank on the screen? I can hear you and see your legislation, but everybody's, pictures are gone.
That's fine. As long as we can hear and see the legislation, we're all
Yep.
set.
Okay,
Thank you.
I just wanted to give you a heads up.
This is the
Live feed,
right?
live feed.
I don't think many people have their cameras turned on. Maybe that's.
Exactly.
No, mine's just spinning and I don't see anybody's pictures. Mine keeps spinning. So maybe it's just my
We can all turn
computer.
ours off.
I leave my video off because I look like I'm in a quarantine.
I have sweatpants.
Oh, dear. Delvin Moody's still on the phone?
I am
So, there we go. I just have to message the video crew. Okay, we are live. All right, it's 7:26, April 15th, 2020. I'm going to call this regular meeting of the City of Utica Common Council to order. I'm going to do a roll call. McNeil,
Here.
Burmaster, Burmaster.
Here.
All right, thank you. Friend,
Here.
Miola,
Present.
Moody,
Here.
Beatrice,
Here.
Williamson,
Yup.
Lametico,
At your service.
Brango.
Here.
All right. Mike Galimi is also present. Clerks, please announce yourselves, please. Clerk and Deputy Clerk.
City Clerk Shortino's here.
All right, thank you very much.
Deputy
All right,
Clerk.
so this,
Deputy Clerk here as well.
thank you. All right, so I'm going to call this meeting to order, and we are going to do the pledge today. So it'll be pretty noisy with all the talk back. That's just fine. So let's begin. Pledge allegiance.
Going to the flag of the United States of America,
And
To the
to the
Republic,
republic, which it stands,
stands
one nation, under God, indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty.
liberty.
and justice for all.
All right, thank you.
Born and unborn.
All right, thank you very much. All right, so the first order of business this evening is public hearing. We have three properties. We have 928 Lansing Street. We have Whitesboro Street, 318.8-1-52.1, and we have Whitesboro Street, 318.8-1-52.6 for the public hearing. Those were aptly announced in our paper of record, and the clerk did not receive any communications on those properties, so the public hearing is now closed. So what we are going to do, I'd like to call for a motion. I get to the property. There we are. Okay, is there a motion to remove ordinance number 2, the ordinance for the lease of the property at 318.8-1-52.1 Whitesboro Street to the Upper Mohawk Valley Memorial Auditorium for 30 years for an annual rent payment of $1 a year?
Councilwoman McNeil.
Second it, Mark Williamson.
All right, so McNeil with the
Thank you.
motion. Williamson with the second. I'm going to call for any opposed from pulling this out of committee. Any opposed from pulling this out of committee? Okay, this is out of committee. We're going to do roll call votes this evening. We got a lot going with the live stream technologically, but we are still going to be doing roll call votes this evening. So at this time, I will bring this to a vote. McNeil,
Yes.
Burmaster,
Mr. President, is anybody going to read the legislation?
this is the same way we usually vote on these properties. I read the property, the sale, and the cost and terms. So this is the legislation is here before us on the screen. So this is exactly what we're doing, and it's all been distributed to the council. Burmaster,
Can you hear me? Yes.
I can now. Yes. Okay. Thank you. Friend,
Yes.
Miola,
Yes.
Moody,
Yes.
Beatrice.
Yes. Can I qualify my vote after this?
Yes, you may after we finish the vote. Thank
Okay.
you. Williamson,
Yes.
Lomatico,
Yes.
DeBrango.
No.
Okay. And Beatrice, you'd like to qualify, and anyone else who would like to qualify, I will also clearly give
Yeah.
the floor. Beatrice, you have the floor.
I just want to say the biggest reason that I'm for this, I know our city, we hear a lot of things about how our city is turned around and how great we're doing, and we have great downtown. But I truly believe in my heart that the Utica Comets, when they came to town, is when this area started turning around. And the Nexus Center, I think, is going to be a great investment for our community, for our youth, for all the children. And this parking lot, when we talked about it a couple weeks ago, my main concern was to make sure that everybody could use this parking lot and that there was no charge for it. And I'm very happy to see that we passed this. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Okay. Would anyone else like to qualify?
Yes, Mr. President. Councilman
All right,
DeBrango.
DeBrango, you have the floor.
Yeah, I have a comment on this. Seeing something being leased for $1 a year for 30 years, I understand they need parking down there. When someone invests $44 million in a project, you would think that they would pay for a lot for parking. So I would have liked to see, but obviously I can't, us sell that for the fair market value, let them take it over, and give them the property and let them maintain it. Now, I know they're going to maintain it, but I looked at the lease. Someone asked about the lease. I looked at the lease, and Section 10 says that they were going to pave it, and the lease said they were going to pave it, but it never gave a date that they had to complete it by. And that kind of bothered me. It could take them 20 years to complete that paving project. It could take them 30 years. It should have had a reasonable amount of time to get it paved and make it look good. But with the way our finances are going to be in the near future, getting a fair market value for that parking lot, whether it be 350,000 or whatever it may have been, I think would have been the way to go for the city of Utica. That's why I voted no. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if nothing else, this is passed 8 yeas. Adopted. Clerk, record. Clerk. You know what? Clerk, deputy clerk, do you have the record?
Yep.
Yes, I got the vote.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. All right. The next piece, ordinance number 3. Is there a motion to remove the sale of 318.8-1-52.6 Whitesboro Street to Anthony Hines and assignee from committee?
Williamson.
All right, Williamson with a motion.
Burmaster, second.
Burmaster with the second. Any opposed from pulling this from committee? To pulling this. Okay. Now on the floor for a vote. This is the ordinance approving the designation Anthony Hines and assignee, an eligible and qualified project sponsor. This is for the sale of the property from the URA to Anthony Hines and assignee for a sum of $180,000. Your votes. McNeil,
Yes.
Burmaster,
Yes.
Friend,
Yes.
Miola,
Yes.
Moody,
Yes.
Beatrice,
Yes.
Williamson,
Yes.
Lomatico,
Yay.
DeBrango.
Yes.
All right, 9 yeas,
9 yeas adopted.
adopted. Thank you. All right, ordinance 4, sale of property at 928 Lansing Street from the URA to Eden Dragovich. Would you like to pull this from committee?
McNeil,
McNeil with a motion,
Friend with a second.
Friend
Thank
with a
you.
second. Any opposed to pulling this from committee? Okay, the sale of property at 928 Lansing Street for the sum of $7,000 from the URA to Eden Dragovich is up for a vote. Your votes, McNeil,
yes.
Burmaster,
Yes.
Friend,
Yes.
Yola,
Yes.
Moody,
Yes.
Beatrice,
Yes.
Williamson,
Yes.
Lometico,
Yay.
DeBrango.
Yes.
Nine
Okay.
years adopted.
Hey, Mike, is there any way you could just ask for nays on this just to move it along quicker? Or is it gotta, do you have to take everybody's?
We on the votes, we got to do a roll call. Yeah,
All right.
thank you. Okay. That is the public hearing. That ends that order of business. The next order of business is the minutes. The minutes have been distributed to the council from the April 1st meeting. Is there a motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes?
McNeil,
Time. McNeil, Williamson with a second. Any opposed to dispensing with the reading of the minutes? Okay, minutes have been dispensed. We do have communications from the mayor this evening. I'm just going to go through. We can all see this. This has been distributed to the council. This is a mayor's message to the common council. This is from Mayor Robert Palmieri. I am reading this, however, this is from him. During this unprecedented time, thank the members of the common council for their partnership as we all adjust to this new normal. He has been in daily contact with federal, state, and local officials. Just 1 second, I'm going to mute some background noise. Almost there. Okay. On March 12th, the city, in coordination with Oneida County, announced the postponement of the St. Patrick's Day Parade. March 16th, we issued an emergency declaration and closed City Hall and the Parkway Recreation Center to the public. On March 23rd, we reduced our workforce to only essential personnel and developed a plan in which several employees are working from home as government must always function, especially during a crisis. Initially, the date non-essential employees were expected to come back to work was April 15th. As the situation evolved, the date was changed to April 30th and is subject to further extension if necessary. On March 24th, we extended our emergency order to include the city basketball courts, tennis courts, soccer fields, baseball fields, and playground equipment shall not be used by the public. On April 8th, we announced an economic stimulus loan program which offers no interest loans to assist Utica businesses impacted by COVID-19. We partnered with the Greater Utica Chamber of Commerce to encourage our community to support local businesses as viable local businesses. I believe there's a typo there. As viable local businesses is a top priority. The city is also offering forbearance for 16 existing business loans with no principal payments or interest due for 3 months. In collaboration with Controller Bill Morehouse, the deadline to pay city taxes has been extended to May 31st. We worked with the Oneida Herkimer Solid Waste Authority to have payment of solid waste bills also extended to May 31st. No interest or penalties will be imposed for FY 2020-2021 city and solid waste bills in which payments are submitted through the city website or postmarked before May 31st. In coordination with Boilermaker Road Race President Mark Donovan and public safety officials, a decision was made to postpone the Boilermaker until September. All city departments, including police and fire departments, have instituted policies to promote the health and safety of city personnel as well as the public. We've worked collaboratively with the state, county, and vendors to secure personal protective equipment and other items. The generosity and warmth of our community is inspiring as several individuals donated PPE and other items to the city. All these actions highlight one consistent trend. The health and safety of our community is at the forefront of every decision we make. If anyone's just tuning into the live feed, this is the mayor's communication to the common council. It is important to Residents recognize the city of Utica remains under an emergency declaration and should observe all federal, state, and local regulations as well as guidelines from public health experts. The city website, www.cityofutica.com, is regularly updated with information pertaining to the coronavirus, as is the city's social media accounts. Moving forward, the Utica is receiving over $1.5 million in additional community development block grant funds and over $700,000 in emergency solutions grant funds as a result of the passage of the CARES Act. The United States Department of Housing and Urban Development is currently promulgating the rules by which said funds are to be expended. The city will be making future announcements regarding how these funds will be allocated. The city will continue to work in conjunction with its partners to promote public health and safety while we provide the services our residents deserve. That is the end of the mayor's communication this evening, and we'll be moving on to the next order of business, reports from the city officers. I do believe we have Assistant Chief Noon on this evening. Do you have anything to report?
I just want to know that, let you know that we are, in the middle of this pandemic. We've had a lot of cases lately that have touched our members. We continue to monitor them. We're receiving PPE and disinfectant materials on a daily basis at this point, and we're on top of it. So we appreciate all the help from the council and the administration. That's it for now.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your services. Chief Williams, do you have anything to report?
I'd just like to add, with the pandemic that we're dealing with, it's really nice to see the community have really come together. I can't express the thanks I've gotten, letters, cards, donations, from food to PPE equipment. When they say that we're in this together, they are absolutely right. And the community has really shined during this pandemic, and they deserve a shout out and some credit for it.
Thank you very much for those words. Corporation Counsel, Charlie Brown or Catherine Hartnett, would you like to add anything?
I have nothing to add. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I have nothing to add either.
Thank you very much. I believe we still have Commissioner Thomas from the Urban and Economic Development Office. Anything this evening?
Yes, I would just like to comment. I believe it was Councilman DeBrango that during the earlier meeting mentioned businesses and the assistance that they are looking for during this time that they are struggling. The mayor did announce that our department has made $500,000 available for the retention of low to moderate income employees to keep them on the payroll for the next 8 weeks. I would encourage anybody that has a business that is looking for this kind of assistance to contact our office, specifically Jack Spaeth in our office, and he'll be able to assist with the application process. We have had applications submitted by close to 50 businesses already, and we expect more as time goes on. Thank you.
Okay. I've just brought up the city website. If anyone asking, you can find the application on the city website for the loan application. This is within the city. Thank you. All right, that ends the reports from the city officers. Thank you very much. Petitions, remonstrances, and appeals, and also any legislation that is to be moved to the floor from Committee of the Whole. Maria McNeil, you have the floor.
First off, I just wanted to start off by saying that I've been outside quite a bit, going for walks and runs and just trying to keep sane. I'm sure most of you are. And it's just overwhelming to see how much support the community is putting out there. The signs on their doors, to all of the kids that are sitting in the windows and waving, and you can't help but stop and wave back at them and just say hi, because everybody just longs for that connection that we can't have at this time. And hopefully in the near future, things will get better, but everyone hang in there. It is hard for everyone. So just wanted to say that first. Next, I'd like to introduce the local law number 3 of 2020. It's the introductory to local law number 3. This is a local law amending the residency requirement regarding police officers who have served for a minimum of 5 years as residents of the city. Would you like me to read the whole thing?
I'll second it.
Who was that second?
Me, Williamson.
All right, so Williamson. Okay, so the motion and second to introduce this local law to the floor. We're going to do a roll call vote to introduce this. McNeil,
Yes.
Burmaster, let's see, Burmaster.
Yes.
Burmaster, okay, that was a yes. Friend,
Yes.
Neola,
No.
Moody,
Yes.
Beatrice,
Yes.
Williamson,
Yes.
Lomatico.
I'm looking for the continuous 5 years residency. I don't
Well,
see
you
it.
haven't made the amendment yet, but would you like to introduce it so that it can be amended?
Yes, I'd like to introduce it.
All right, thank you. DeBrango.
Yes.
Okay, so McNeil, your motion has carried. This is introduced. Would you like to make a motion to amend as discussed?
I believe we amended that we changed it in pre-caucus caucus, did we not?
Okay, so we did, and I did not change the PDF in the meantime. So this is what we will do.
That's what I was getting at.
Yeah, so this,
Okay.
well, I just read the title. I can read the whole the whole local law if you'd like me to.
Mm-hmm. Is this where you would like to insert continuous, by the way?
No, I believe it should be just inserted in the I, lowercase I, after the minimum 5 years residency consecutive or not consecutive, right? Of consecutive individuals employed with, is that?
Continuous.
Continuous, I believe is what Charlie Brown was.
Oh yeah, of continuous, sorry.
Okay, so there's a motion, or well, okay, so
I'm sorry, is that 5 years continuous residency?
Of continuous, of continuous.
5 years of continuous residency. Okay, because that's not where the little arrow is.
It's what?
That's not where the little arrow is. The arrow is.
It's got to be, the arrow's got to be after the years.
okay.
Mike,
You want to move it up to the bold part?
Oh, I didn't even pay attention to that.
Yeah. Well, so here's what I'd like to do.
And I
gotta be in there twice,
thought we
right?
had done this in pre-caucus caucus so that we could lay
Well,
this on the table.
so just everyone hold on one second. We did, but we're not in the office as usual, reprinting things in between the meetings. So what I'd like to do here, you could just hang on 1 second. I will modify this. All right. Okay. At the next meeting, what I'll be doing is opening this up, legislation in an editor that I can actually just type into if that's the case. But this now says of continuous. And
I believe it.
How about up on the bold? We got to put it up in the
McNeil,
bold
if you-
area up there too.
McNeil, if you would like to, the bold is the title. The title of this will not go into the actual section. It will be
So I
the
believe
amended
if I
portion.
understood Charlie Brown correctly, it should say after the minimum of 5 continuous years of residency, correct?
No, I think 5 years of continuous residency
Okay,
after the minimum of, oh, yeah, at the minimum of 5 years of continuous residency.
so it needs an of
That's
and
better grammar, you're right.
So where do you want it?
Add another
I
of
just came
between
back
minimum
online.
and 5.
The grammar is correct. The minimum 5 years of continuous.
Continuous.
After the minimum 5.
okay,
Yeah, that's good.
okay.
You're fine with it that way? After the minimum 5 years of continuous residence.
Right.
Yes.
That'll be in the heading and then the first paragraph. Okay. I lost everybody, by the way. That's why I just got back on.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
So my next motion would be to lay this on the table.
Did you vote on the amendment?
We would need to read this into the record and then lay it on the table. So.
And did you vote on the amendment?
This into the record.
to vote on the amendment.
The amendment was made in committee, so this was introduced
Yeah,
as
that's
amended.
no good. Yeah, but that's no good in committee. You have to amend it on the floor. What you do in committee is of no question. Yeah, what you do on the floor is what goes in. So did you amend it on the floor? And
Yes.
there was a motion and it passed.
No.
Okay. There was a motion.
Clarify, it should have
The
been
amendment.
in committee and that we were bringing it to the floor as amended.
It can't be amended in committee. That's what I'm telling you.
Yeah, but
Amend it in the caucus room.
you're 100% correct.
But you have to go at the meeting. At the meeting, you have to amend it. And all you do is you amend it as you probably agreed before, but you can change your mind once you get in the meeting. So, is there a motion to amend this?
Judge Garabone, just hold on just 1 second. Judge Garabone,
yeah.
the piece was not introduced prior. It was discussed in committee as a new piece of legislation, and the council
It is
completed
not in committee. This is in committee?
No.
This
per how the council
this
introduces
legislation-
things.
Now, this legislation is before you as a new piece. You have to introduce it. Then after you've read it, then you can amend it, but it takes a motion and a second and an affirmance as to whatever the amendment is. You have to do that now on the floor at the council meeting. What you do in the caucus is of no value, except that you know what you're going to do. So has there been a motion to amend
Councilwoman,
introductory local law?
Councilwoman, if you'd like to just agree this was introduced as written and presented in committee, and just make the motion to amend section I so that we could move on, it would be greatly appreciated. So
But you have to amend the caption, and you have to amend I. That number, it's really number 1. Is there a motion to do that?
I'll make a
From anyone?
motion.
all right, thank you. There's a motion
Is
from
there a second?
Lomatico. Well, so hold on. There's a motion from Lomatico to
I would like, the motion is, I'd like to change where it says, in the heading, a local law amending the residency requirement regarding police officers who have served for a minimum of, and the amendment would be of 5 continuous years as a resident, and to be as a resident of the city. Okay, and then the second would be in column I, after a minimum 5 years, continuous residency. I would like that put in there as well.
okay.
That's good.
Is there a second?
I second it.
There you go.
All right. One person, second. Is
McNeil.
it,
Beatrice?
all right. We're going to go with McNeil. Any opposed to that amendment? Okay. Legislation has been amended.
Mr. President, Mr. President, we have the floor for a second amendment.
Yeah, well, you may make a second amendment, yes.
I would like to make a motion for this local law to be included on the 2020 ballot referendum as a question.
I would
I
like to
truly
second.
believe, I truly believe that the Fourth Ward residents would like the opportunity to vote on this.
I would like to second that.
So there's a motion to rewrite this local law to place this on the ballot for the 2020 election. There's a second from Friend. Clerks, please make sure we're noting these motions as this is on the
We have
floor
that.
right now. Thank you. I'm going to take a roll call vote on that amendment. McNeil,
No.
Burmaster,
No,
Friend,
Yes.
Miola,
Yes.
Moody,
No.
Beatrice,
No.
Williamson,
Negative, no.
Lomatico,
No.
DeBrango.
No.
All right, that's 7 nays defeated. That motion was not approved. At this time, is there a motion to lay this on the table?
I'd like to put it on the table.
Beatrice.
Lomedico would like to put it on the table.
All right, so
Wait.
Lomatico with a motion,
Williamson
Beatrice
second.
with a second.
And Beatrice second.
I have Beatrice already for the second on that. All right, so roll call vote to lay this local law on the table for 7 days. Neil,
Yes.
Burmaster,
yes,
Friend,
Yes.
Miola,
No.
Moody,
Yes.
Beatrice,
yes.
Williamson,
Yes.
Lomatico,
Yay.
DeBrango.
Yes.
Okay, that was 8 yeas. It's on the table. Laid on the table, the council.
Mr. President, this is the deputy clerk. I just have a procedural question. Is it required for that first motion to amend, that first amendment, do you need a roll call for that? Because you never did one.
We don't, I mean, we can do a roll call on that one, for things that seem
Well,
unanimous. I was doing.
Mike, let's make it official.
Well, it is in the record officially. I did, call for nays on that one and we had none. But,
Did? Okay, I didn't catch that.
yeah, it's.
I didn't catch that either.
Yeah. Thank you.
Let's do
Well,
it again just to make sure.
Well, we can't do it
Okay.
again. We laid it on the
Okay.
table.
All
All right.
But from here on out, I know some people are asking me sometimes to do roll calls, sometimes not. I should do all roll calls from here on out. And that's just what we'll do until we can modify that. All right. So, Councilwoman McNeil, do you have anything else you'd like to pull from committee at this time or introduce for that matter?
No, I'm all set.
Okay.
Or
Councilman Burmaster, you have the floor.
thank you, President. First of all, I'd like to thank the Utica Police Department, the way they handled the issue over on Ash and City Street on, I believe it was Monday night. There was quite a crowd of residents in the area, and the safety of the residents came first and foremost. And I want to thank the police department for the way they handled that. At this time, I have no other further comment. Thank you.
Thank you,
Very
sir.
much. Okay. Councilperson Friend, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't have much in terms of petitions, remonstrances. I do want to thank people in City Hall who made the live streaming of this meeting possible. I think that's really important. And I appreciate that it took a lot of effort and technical know-how to make that happen. So a shout out to Frank Motolo and to President Galimi for making that happen. Thank you very much. And I would like at this time to bring Resolution 1 to the floor, please.
Second.
Who was the second on that?
Moody.
Moody. Okay.
And I would like to read it, if that's okay?
I will, you can read it and then we'll vote on bringing it to the floor. Yes, please
Okay.
read that.
Okay. Rental relief resolution, COVID-19 emergency assistance. Whereas the pandemic COVID-19 has had devastating economic impact on our communities and city that could not have been anticipated or prepared for in advance, and huge numbers of people have suddenly and unexpectedly lost their jobs and been forced to file for unemployment benefits in record numbers. And the people most affected by these economic impacts are low and moderate income renters. And whereas although certain legal measures have been taken to ensure that renters cannot be evicted for non-payment of rent during this state of emergency, there are, as of yet, no guarantee that renters behind on the rent will not be evicted and made homeless after state of emergency ends. And whereas Congressman Anthony Brindisi has secured extra monies for Utica through the Emergency Solutions Grants for New York as part of the Federal CARES Act, and Utica will be receiving $1.48 million of this aid, and these monies are intended to alleviate and mitigate against homelessness. Whereas the City of Utica has the active and excellent Utica Municipal Housing Authority, which already works tirelessly to provide adequate housing to members of our community, but their abilities to do so are constrained by their lack of funds. And be it resolved that the City of Utica will disperse these federal aid monies as direct rent relief subsidies to residents of Utica who have been adversely affected by COVID-19 and are thereby unable to pay their rent. These monies shall be dispersed and administered by local agencies, including the UMHA, consistent with regulations as established by the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development. Thank you.
Can I make an amendment?
First, we're going to vote on introducing this. So McNeil.
Yes.
Okay, Burmaster.
Yeah.
Friend.
Yes.
Viola.
Yeah, I guess.
All right, thank you. Yes, all right. Moody.
Yeah.
I think we should vote on amendment first, but that's all right.
Well, we
Okay,
have
go
to
ahead.
introduce it to amend it, but yes.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Beatrice.
Yes.
Williamson.
Yes.
Lomatico.
Okay.
Franco.
Yes.
All right, it's introduced. Moody, you'd like to make an amendment, motion to amend, please?
Yeah, on the third whereas, I want to take out, and Utica will be receiving $1.48 million of this aid. I just wanted to say, as part of the Federal CARES Act, and these monies are intended to alleviate and mitigate against homelessness. The other change I want to make is, be it resolved that the City of Utica Common Council recommends these federal aid monies to be used as rent relief subsidies to residents of Utica who have been adversely affected by COVID-19 and are thereby unable to pay their rent. These monies may be dispersed and administered by local agencies, including the UMHA, consistent with regulations as established by the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development.
All right, just for the record, so I could jot this up here. The first part was being resolved that the City of Utica Common Council recommends.
Yes.
Be it resolved that the Common Council recommends all right, thank you. That the City of Utica will disperse. Okay, is there a second to that amendment?
Yes.
Second, Viola.
Viola's got the second on that one. Roll call vote really quick on that amendment. McNeil.
Yes.
Burmaster.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Viola.
Yes.
Moody.
Yes.
Beatrice.
Yes.
Williamson.
Yes.
Latico.
Yes.
Brango.
Yes.
Okay, as amended, I'm going to bring this to a vote. Is there any other debate? Okay, this is going to be brought to a vote. McNeil.
Yes.
Burmaster.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
Viola.
Yes.
Moody.
Yes.
Beatrice.
Yes, and I want to qualify my vote afterward.
All right, Williamson.
Yes.
Lomatico.
Yay.
Brango.
Yes.
All right, Beatrice, you have the floor.
The only thing I want to say is the reason that I voted for this is after Councilman Moody's amendment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Does that end your remonstrances?
Well, I'd like to say something on it as well.
All right, you would like the floor. Lomedico has the floor.
Yeah, I just think from now on, when people write legislation, they should have the judge look at it first. That's his job here, and so that we don't have garbage coming at us. So I'd like to thank everybody for voting yes. I think this is good that we take care of the people in our city here, and I was glad to vote yes for it. Thank you.
Okay. It was adopted by 9 yeas, and Councilman Miola and President Pro Temp, you now have the floor for remonstrances, appeals, and legislation.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'd just like to thank, I guess, everybody in New York City and New York State for doing the best they could to adhere to Governor Cuomo's requests for everything that we are doing through COVID-19. In addition to that, if this recent request was tonight, to wear a mask anytime we go into a public place. I know they're hard to find. I know they're hard to locate. There's all kinds of stuff on the internet that offers us a chance to put these masks together with using garments and using other type of clothing, rubber bands. Take the governor's lead. Do the best you could to prohibit the spread and do the best you could to keep safe. And I hope everybody well and family safety. Thank you.
Thank you. Moody, you have the floor.
I just want to thank all of the council for voting in favor of this. I think it sends a great statement, and I look forward to working with everyone to get it on. I also want to make mention of that while we did this, there's other components. So many people are hurting. I'm also thinking about what we can do in terms of getting Wi-Fi access to students that need. Spectrum is holding up their part of extending Wi-Fi to those families that have students, making sure that people are just taken care of, and the coronavirus and COVID-19 is really impacting us all. So thank members of the council for all the work that you do, helping us get this resolution past the finish line. And I hope that you all are safe and that your families are safe. Also thoughts and prayers for the people in this community and in the state. Some friends of mine that I know that have lost loved ones, and it's a tough time for all of us. Just don't pray for all of the people suffering during this time. That's it, Mr. President.
Thank you. Okay, Councilman Beatrice.
Yes.
You have the floor.
Okay.
Remonstrances and appeals.
First thing I want to say is great job to everybody from City Hall, to you, Mr. President. And I know it's you've heard it before, but it's truly, you're doing a great job doing this. My next thing is I want to thank I'm pretty proud of the whole council here, the way we put differences aside and we came through and everybody spoke their piece, and we, came to a conclusion on the homeless relief fund. I think we did a great job on that. And then the last thing I want to say is everybody, if anybody's out there listening, please follow all the rules. Please stay home, stay safe, keep you're 6 to 8 feet away from everybody, and hopefully by a month or so we're back in City Hall doing our meetings normal. And then the last thing, I'd like to pull ordinance number 5 on the feral cat legislation, and I request that we put that in committee, the codes committee. And I'd like to have a meeting with all the council and bring some outside people in to find a resolution. And as I said in caucus, this legislation was not brought up to try to help, to try to stop people from, feeding pets or animals. There's just certain areas where we have an abundance, in some places 15 to 20 cats, and they're not, people feeding them are not helping these cats, and they're causing nuisances to the neighbors next door. So I did this to help people, not to harm anybody. That's all I have, Mr. President. Thank you so much.
All right, so there's a motion to introduce an ordinance named the Feral Cat Ordinance. The intention is to place this in the Codes Committee. Is there a second to introduce the ordinance, which was discussed and read in the Committee of the Whole pre-meeting conference and is before us on the screen? Is there a second?
Yes, DeBrango.
DeBrango with the second.
Also, I just want to waive the
Mr.
Thursday
President.
rule on this.
Yes, thank you, Frankie. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We have Councilman DeBrango.
Motion to waive the Thursday
Motion to
rule.
waive the Thursday rule. Okay, Miola's got the motion. DeBrango, you want to second that?
Yes.
DeBrango? All right. Okay, so on this simple motion, I'm going to say any opposed to waiving the Thursday rule. Okay, Thursday rule is waived. On the motion to introduce, it was Beatrice. Who was the second? It was DeBrango to second in the introduction. Roll call vote. McNeil?
Yes.
Burmaster?
Yes.
Friend?
Yes.
Miola?
Yes.
Moody? Beatrice?
Yep.
Yes.
Williamson? Modico?
Yes.
Yay.
Burmaster? Or I'm sorry, DeBrango.
Yes.
All right, sorry about that. And then Councilman Beatrice, you would like to make a motion to place this in the codes?
Yes.
Okay, second?
DeBrango.
Okay. Any opposed to placing that in the codes? Committee. Okay. It's in the committee. Please schedule your meeting. You have anything else, Councilman Beatrice?
No, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Councilman Williamson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Hold on. Thank you, Mr. President. Everybody kind of said everything we need to say, so is following the lead as a councilman at large. I have nothing to pass. I concur with everybody, what they said about what's going on in the public. I'm not going to repeat everything and hear myself talk, so I have nothing to pass.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Lemetico, you now have the floor.
All right, I'd like to bring out a resolution on the PPE.
Okay. Would you like to read said resolution you are making a motion to introduce? Or would you like me to summarize?
Maria said she could. I think Maria would
Okay.
like to read it for me.
Okay.
I don't have it in
Councilwoman?
front of me.
Memorializing resolution. Whereas Utica, New York is facing a public health crisis unlike any other recent memory. And whereas the COVID-19 pandemic is putting a stress on public and private healthcare systems that are already stretched very thin. And whereas Utica, New York is seeking a spike in COVID-19 cases and is taking unprecedented steps in slowing down the rate of infections. And whereas our healthcare workers and first responders are on the front line of this pandemic and need personal protection equipment, which are in short supply, and whereas healthcare workers are putting themselves in personal danger while providing a life-saving service, and whereas healthcare workers deserve the best for our public dollars, therefore be it resolved by the City of Utica, Section 1, that the City of Utica hereby registers its strongest possible support to healthcare workers and first responders who are doing their best every day. And be it further resolved, Section 2, that the City of Utica hereby calls on federal government to take every measure that workers get the PPE that they sorely need to protect their patients and themselves. including institution and national supply chain, emptying the federal stockpile, banning exports of PPE already in the U.S., and using the Defense Production Act to require additional manufacturing, and be it further resolved, Section 3, that these workers and their facilities must receive the funding they need now and in the future so that we can handle any public health issue that may come our way. This resolution shall be distributed to the U.S. Senator Chuck Schumer, U.S. Senator Kristen Gillibrand, U.S. Congressperson Anthony Brindisi, Governor Andrew Cuomo, New York State Senator Joe Griffo, and New York State Assembly Person Marianne Buttonshon.
Mr. President,
Yeah.
I would like to know if this council would like to do a full council on this.
I'm good with full council.
Yeah, we
I'm
did
good
that.
with full council.
Yep.
Any opposed?
I'll agree.
Full council?
I second it.
All right, all right, any opposed? All right, so full council was seconded by DeBrango. Clerks, please let the record show that this is full council. Your votes. Actually, hold on a second. It was just read. We need a second on, we need a second on introducing this.
Beatrice.
I seconded it.
Beatrice.
Beatrice is the second. Roll call vote on introducing this piece of legislation. McNeil,
Yes.
Burmaster,
Yes.
Friend,
Yes.
Miola,
Yes.
Moody,
Yes.
Beatrice,
Yes.
Williamson,
Yes.
Lomatico.
Yes, and I'd like to qualify one after the vote.
This is just the introduction. We can vote on it in a
Okay.
minute. DeBrango, yes.
I'm in another.
Yes.
Okay, it's been introduced. It's a real piece of legislation. Now we're going to vote on it. McNeil,
Yes.
Burmaster,
Yes.
Friend,
Yes.
Miola,
Yes.
Moody,
Yes.
Beatrice,
Yes.
Williamson,
Yes.
Lomatico, and I'll give you the floor when we're done.
Yay.
DeBrango.
Yes.
Okay, Lomatico, you requested the floor.
97.
Yes, I'd just like to thank the council for voting on this, on a full council and supporting it. I think it's very, very important that our first responders, as well as our medical people, are given all the equipment and supplies they need to battle this epidemic. I would also like to mention that, unfortunately, I think the state, specifically docs and the mental health at Marcy Correctional and Marcy Psych Center, were very late in doing this. And as a result, a number of people working there, as well as the people that are housed there, had gotten this disease. And shame on them. And too bad the governor didn't back his words on taking care of the state people as well. So I hope this new law that he has created it forced his own hand finally to take care of the people in docks and everyone else at Marcy Psych Center there. So everyone that has been sick from this disease, I pray to God that you all are well, and everybody that doesn't make it, God bless your souls. Thank you very much.
I'd like
Thank
to
you.
qualify as well.
Sure.
I just wanted to say that I did speak with our administration, and all of the workers in the city of Utica have their proper PPE. DPW, police department, everybody has everything that they need in the city of Utica, and I just wanted to say kudos to our administration for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, there's no more qualification. This piece has passed. Next person for remonstrances, if you have nothing else, Councilman Lomatico.
I'm good. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, Councilman DeBrango, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. There's a couple of things I want to give a shout out to, all these people that are essential workers, the grocery store personnel, bus drivers, healthcare workers in the nursing homes, as well as the hospitals, the janitors, the the food service people in the hospitals, the fire, EMS, police personnel, correction officers. I mean, they're all going to work knowing that, dealing with the public every day, and it's just, you never know if you're going to come home with this virus. So I just want to give them a big shout out. I know it's, you work every day and you come home and you have to come home to your family, and you're hoping everything is okay. So I just wanted to give them a shout out, and I appreciate all the work that they do. Thank you. And one thing, I don't know if the assistant chief of the fire department is on. Is he still on?
I believe he is, yes.
I would recommend you send somebody to Delvin Moody's house for the smoke detector.
I was going to say the same thing.
I've been caught.
All right, thank you, Mr. President. Thank
What
you.
is that, the bell?
Good
Is
ear.
that-
No, that's someone text messaging. Every time Councilman Moody has been speaking, you can hear his fire alarm going on.
Oh.
I'll send somebody right now.
Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, thank you. Before we move on, I have something for petitions as well this evening. It's related to PPE. It's a little bit different than the resolution that the council just passed. Obviously, masks and other personal protective equipment are imperative for frontline workers in public safety, hospitals, any essential business. But as what we've seen, just voluntarily, but also now with the governor's executive order, masks are going to become an essential piece of gear for just regular people. The reason I'm bringing this up right now is there's a lot of news, there's a lot of discussion just in the general media right now that there's supply chain issues, masks are hard to get, people can't find stock, distributors can't bring them in. I have firsthand account that is not true. It is absolutely a supply chain issue, but as with every other business that is struggling right now, distributors are also struggling with cash flow, with line of credit issues, keeping their employees paid while keeping stock. Not only locally, but nationally, there's plenty of businesses that have supply chain where they absolutely can bring in hundreds of thousands of masks, domestically and globally. And they could be supplying those and making those available for purchase, not only for the public safety workers, but also the general public. And I'm urging anyone who's on the call that has contact with any state, federal, county officials that what we should be doing right now, in addition to all of the other relief that the governments are putting out there, is lining up those low interest loans for distributors that can bring in that PPE equipment and increase the supply chain. Yes, requests for federal, opening of federal reserves of PPE are things that can be done. The same thing at the state level. But the real issue we have right now is the people that can buy in these masks need to prepay the manufacturers. And if they can't prepay the manufacturers for millions of dollars worth of orders, those masks won't end up on the shelves. So please, when all of these relief discussions are being had, think about the suppliers that don't want a handout, but just might need actual support right now in the form of small business loans to bring in that gear so that we can all be made safe. That's all I have this evening. And the last thing I wanted to close off with is thank you to everyone for embracing all the technology that we've had to work with. Thank you for all the thank yous. Many people mentioned it. We also have NHP Video, who runs our cameras for the council meeting. They're doing the live streaming on YouTube this evening for us as well. Frank Matullo, a bunch of names were brought up, but it's really nice to see the city as a whole step up and just embrace something completely new and get business done this way, because we are absolutely a functioning government and fully remote right now. So I appreciate it. So thank you. All right. With that, does anyone have anything else before we call for a motion to adjourn this evening?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second. That was DeBrango and Williamson. Any opposed? Okay, I'm closing off the recording. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Good night,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.